Okay, team, listen up. This is an urgent operational briefing. Let's get straight to it.
We're putting this advisory out because it's our job to get the word out safely and clearly. We're not trying to cause a panic. We're here because there is a life threat in the wild, and you need to know what to do about it right now.
Let me be crystal clear. The situation is critical. We're talking about a Windows Zero-Day that isn't some theoretical problem. It is being actively exploited out in the real world. That means the bad guys had this and were using it before a fix was even ready.
All right, let's name our target. The vulnerability you need to focus on immediately is CVE-2026-20805. This is the one we're going to break down piece by piece.
So let's start with the disclosure. You can think of this as a code red alert. Things really kicked off on January 13th, 2026, and it forced an immediate all-hands-on-deck response from Microsoft and CISA. So here are the hard facts. We have confirmed active exploitation, and the target profile? It's huge. Windows 10, Windows 11, and Windows Server are all vulnerable. CISA moved fast on this, slamming it right into their KV catalog and giving federal agencies a hard deadline of February 3rd to get it patched. Now, when you see a mandate like that, it's a massive signal that this is a serious risk for everybody, not just the government. Okay, so to really get why this is so dangerous, we gotta look under the hood. Let's dive into the anatomy of this thing and understand the technical primitive that the attackers are using to their advantage. So the heart of the problem is inside the Desktop Window Manager, or DWM.exe. Now, you gotta understand, this isn't just any old process. It's the component that draws everything you see on your screen: windows, effects, the whole shebang. And because of that, it runs with really high privileges, which makes any flaw in it a huge, flashing neon sign for attackers. So check this out. Normally, it works like this. An app sends a well-formed message, and DWM processes it and sends back clean, safe information. Simple, right? But the exploit is on the right. An attacker sends a specially crafted malicious message. DWM fails to check it properly. And here's the kicker. It spits back a raw memory pointer. That is like handing an attacker a master key to the system's memory. It should never, ever happen. And that's the whole game right there. This isn't just about leaking a tiny piece of information. This is what attackers call a stepping stone. It's not the end goal, it's the critical first move that makes a much bigger, more devastating attack possible. Now, the first thing you might see when you look this up is its CVSS score, 5.5, medium severity. I'm telling you right now, you can just throw that number out the window. It is dangerously misleading and completely misses the real-world impact. You know, Kev Breen over at Immersive Labs put it perfectly. He said, "Don't be fooled by its relatively low score. Threat actors are already using this against organizations." And he's absolutely right. The fact that it's being actively exploited is what turns this from a textbook problem into a real-world fire you have to put out. So you might be wondering, why is one little memory pointer such a big deal? Well, it all comes down to defeating a core security feature called Address Space Layout Randomization, or ASLR. I love this analogy. Think of ASLR as constantly rearranging the furniture in a dark room to trip up a burglar. Well, this vulnerability, it's the burglar finding the main light switch. Here's how they chain it all together. First, the attacker uses this flaw to leak that memory address. With that little piece of information, they can now calculate the exact layout of the system's memory, completely bypassing ASLR's protection. And now, for the final move, they can launch a much more powerful secondary attack, like a remote code execution exploit, with perfect precision. It turns a game of chance into a guaranteed hit. And look how fast this all happened. Microsoft discovered it while it was already being used in attacks. Then, January 13th, boom, day zero. The patch drops, Microsoft confirms active exploitation, and CISA adds it to the must-patch list, all in the same 24-hour period. Just 3 days later, researchers had already published the proof of concept logic. The speed here is just incredible, and it means we have to respond just as fast. Okay, enough about the problem. Let's talk about the solution. This is your defensive playbook. This is what you need to do right now. So here are your orders. They're direct and they're actionable. Priority number 1, no excuses, is to apply the patch. The January 2026 cumulative security update fixes WM.exe so it stops mishandling these requests and closes the leak for good. This is the only definitive fix. Seriously, patching is not optional here. It's your primary mission. Now let's say for some reason you can't patch immediately. Then you need to shift gears and go hunting.
You're looking for two key things. First, anomalous ALPC traffic. If you see something weird like PowerShell or some unknown binary making a ton of connections to the DWM API, that's a huge red flag. Second, watch for suspicious process creation. A web browser should never be spawning a child process that's running as system. That's a classic sign that something is very, very wrong.
And finally, now is the time to tighten the screws with some compensating controls. Reduce your attack surface by restricting any unauthorized apps that can run. Enforce strict application allow listing to stop untrusted code in its tracks. And isolate your critical workloads. These are the kinds of steps that can stop an attacker from ever being able to trigger the flaw in the first place. So, as you can see, this DWM vulnerability is a real beast. But it's important to remember that it didn't just appear in a vacuum. Let's zoom out and look at the wider threat landscape from that same January Patch Tuesday. I mean, January 2026 was just a massive month. All told, Microsoft patched a whopping 114 different vulnerabilities. 8 of those were rated critical, and importantly, 3 were zero-days, including the one we've been focused on. It was a very significant month for defenders. And this DWM bug wasn't the only major threat on the list. We also had critical remote code execution flaws in Microsoft Office that could be triggered just by using the preview pane. There was also a publicly disclosed secure boot bypass and even ongoing attacks targeting Windows Server update services. Yeah, defenders definitely had their hands full. So we'll close with this thought. This zero-day is patched, which is great, but the incident is a stark reminder that the most dangerous threats often start with a vulnerability that looks minor on paper, a sleeping giant. So the question to take back to your teams is this: what is the next sleeping giant hiding in your system? Stay vigilant out there.